and enriching lives.
The project is a joint effort by the LA Public Library, the Housing Authority of the City of Los Angeles, and community organizations like Kids Progress, Inc. So far, another community library at the Ramona Gardens Housing Project has been very successful. Community leaders hope for success here as well, in a neighborhood where kids often face many obstacles to success.
We got a lot of feedback from the residents there that although there was a nearby library, it was difficult for them to get access to because it crossed gang boundaries.
They are our children, and we will let them learn.
Singing megastar will.i.am, who grew up in Boyle Heights, has donated dozens of computers, together with the I Am Angel Foundation.
This is where it all started for will.i.am, and so having an up-to-date library is critical to keeping the community safe and competitive.
The library will also be a Wi-Fi hot zone for kids without computer access at home, and organizers hope it will be a hotbed of learning as well. I'm Anna Marcos for LA This Week.
3 bilingual librarians will help staff the library. Thanks to a renaissance downtown, entrepreneurs are setting their sights on Los Angeles once again, and doing so with the help of City Hall. The message: the city wants your business. David McGrath is a trained chef, but after spending more than 2 decades in the food service and hospitality business, he was ready to venture out on his own by opening a champagne lounge. And of all the places, McGrath chose to open the lounge in downtown LA because of the renewed energy that's once again bustling on the streets.
It just keeps getting better and better. We've been here 3 years, and we've seen a drastic improvement in all facets: safety, cleanliness, and just more and more businesses opening up, as well as residential.
McGrath's new Aqua Lounge, a chic and contemporary champagne bar in the heart of downtown, is part of Councilmember Jose Huizar's district, a district the councilman has been working hard to make into the destination spot it once was decades ago.
Downtown is changing, and we have people who are beginning to live here, more people who are coming back to work in downtown, and this will add to a place where there's more and more people walking the streets, venues like this to continue the upswing of downtown Los Angeles.
What also made opening his business here in Los Angeles attractive was the assistance McGrath received from the Valley Economic Development Center, or VEDC, a partner of the City of Los Angeles.
They provided a loan to do many of the tenant improvements and working capital. They're a great organization.
VEDC assists businesses with loans and helps walk them through the city's required paperwork.
We actually started working with David back in 2010 when we helped finance the Onyx Lounge, and we're very proud to be able to help finance this business here.
In return, new businesses like Aqua Lounge bring jobs, in this case 15 new jobs, a give-and-take partnership between a city and its business owners. Now that's worth popping open the bubbly. The Aqua Lounge is located at 500 South Spring Street. It will serve approximately 15 champagnes and sparkling wines by the glass, specialty champagne cocktails, and over 150 champagnes by the bottle. Ever wonder how cities clean their water? Well, now you can find that out and a lot more thanks to a new environmental learning center from the city's Department of Public Works. Yana Kay takes us there.
This interactive water treatment exhibit gives visitors an inside look at how water is cleaned at the Hyperion Treatment Plant. It's all part of a new environmental learning center that promotes the importance of sustainability and of protecting the environment.
If we don't take care of the environment will not take care of us. My school asks for empty bottles and cans so that we can all take part in recycling.
The 20,000 square foot facility located at the Hyperion Treatment Plant in Playa del Rey was officially opened to the public recently, with various city officials and community members taking a tour of what the center has to offer.
This place is wicked cool. I gotta say, the highlight of my day, I'm heartbroken at the idea of having to go back to an office later to have this view and to be able to go in there and play.
The new center is designed to increase the public's awareness of the impact of human activity on our surroundings through interactive, state-of-the-art exhibits. The goal is to empower everyone to do their part.
A sustainable life is possible here in the City of Angels.
Indeed, it is the most important thing.
The building itself is energy efficient with a green roof, solar panels, and a solar hot water heater. It also features a stream and wetland. A hands-on experience that officials hope can make a difference, one recycled can at a time. I'm Yana Kay for LA This Week.
And more on water, a summit to discuss how cities can continue to conserve H2O. A council member advocates for professional football to come to LA, and a long-awaited project finally breaks ground in Chinatown. These stories and more in City Beat. The One Water Leadership Summit held recently in Los Angeles focused on water sustainability and explored how cities can promote smarter water solutions. While LA faces many water challenges, Mayor Eric Garcetti says residents have done their part to conserve water by voting on things like the Prop O Clean Water Bond.
I know you'll see some of the projects that we've done that we've showed voters will vote for, that we've shown communities will embrace, and that have had the secondary impact of making sure that we sustain life here for some time.
Some of the nation's water conservationists also shared success stories on how their cities conserve water through integration, capture, and reuse. Los Angeles uses between 500 and 6 million gallons of water a day. The Los Angeles City Council Economic Development Committee recently discussed a motion brought forth by Councilmember Tom LaBonge to bring the National Football League back to Los Angeles. His motion was seconded by 6 fellow council members.
But I'm going to continue to advocate. I'm working on a campaign to reach out to NFL players who are retired in Los Angeles to have them, remind them. It puzzles me why, out of 32 teams, one doesn't want to come here to sunny Southern California. And I would hope that they do, and we just wanted to let them know that, and the day will come.
The motion also encourages the league to bring 2 football teams to the city. A project in Chinatown in the planning stages during former Councilmember Ed Reyes' tenure as council member of the 1st District is finally in construction now under new Councilmember Gil Cedillo's watch. Cedillo helped kick off construction for the Blossom Plaza development that had been held up for well over 10 years. The mixed-use complex will boast 237 housing units, including some low-income units, as well as retail and restaurant space. Cedillo advocated for the additional $4 million needed to finance and secure the completion of the project, which is projected to be completed in the spring of 2016. Roosevelt High School students and their parents recently joined Councilman Jose Huizar to celebrate the installation of a new traffic light right outside the school at East 4th and South Fickett Streets in Boyle Heights. Parents concerned over safety have worked with Huizar's office and that of the Department of Transportation for the last 5 years to get a light installed at the busy intersection. The Department of Transportation identified Proposition C dollars to fund the light installation, along with prioritizing about a dozen other unfunded traffic signals near schools. Nearly 500 people came out recently to the PortTech LA Expo to see how new green technology is helping shape LA's future. Yana Kay has more.
These may look like your typical everyday cars, but if you look closer, you'll see that they run on electricity. These cars and trucks were on display at the 4th annual PortTech LA Expo as examples of clean technology. The expo, held at the port's crafted warehouse, showcased sustainable port technologies that port officials say is vital to the future of the city.
We need to grow this port because by growing this port, we grow Los Angeles. By making this port more valuable, we grow Los Angeles and every portion of Los Angeles.
Mayor Eric Garcetti says this event promotes and advances clean port technology and also connects smaller tech companies with other green business leaders to help them grow and expand.
We've shown that when somebody gets an incubator experience, meaning they get a mentor, they get advice, access to capital, they go from being just an idea to a successful company at a much higher rate than most startups.
And to help the city's startups grow, a new city office has been created called the Economic Workforce and Development Department, which offers local businesses assistance and incentives.
Our task is to identify and to make the best use of our resources, both monetary and people, to drive an innovation and creativity agenda.
An innovative agenda that city officials hope will put the Port of Los Angeles ahead of all the others. I'm Yana Kay for LA This Week.
Local students also attended the expo to learn about becoming scientists and engineers. In this week's list of things to do, Grand Park turns 1, Totem in San Pedro, and the Taste of Encino. While the Disney Concert Hall has just turned 10, Grand Park downtown turns 1 on Thursday, October 10th. From 7 to 10 p.m. Thursday, enjoy a free concert on Grand Park's performance lawn at 200 North Grand Avenue. You're encouraged to bring a picnic. The concert is being held in conjunction with Daniel Pearl World Music Days, an international network of concerts that use the power of music to reaffirm our commitment to tolerance and humanity. Go to grandparkla.org for details. Your chance to catch the Cirque du Soleil show Totem is here. Totem opens on Friday, October 11th at 8 p.m. at the Port of Los Angeles Pier in San Pedro, located at 311 South Minor Street at Berth 46. It leaves for Irvine at the beginning of November. Combining mesmerizing acrobatic acts and stunning visual effects, Totem illustrates the evolutionary progress of the human species in an uplifting display of athleticism, comedy, and beauty. For tickets and other information, go to cirquedusoleil.com/totem. And a bit further north in Encino, on Sunday, October 13th, the Encino Chamber of Commerce presents the 26th anniversary of the Taste of Encino from 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. It takes place along Ventura Boulevard from Balboa to Amestoy. There will be, of course, food, arts and crafts, a wellness pavilion, live music, and activities for kids. Admission is free, so bring the whole family. The LA Kings Ice Crew and LA Galaxy Star Squad will also be making a special appearance with great prize giveaways. Go to tasteofencino.com. A portion of the proceeds raised will help fund local school and community projects. And that's a look at some upcoming things to do. And as we just told you, the wait is almost over for Cirque du Soleil's Totem. But before the show can raise the curtains, it had to first raise the tent. Yana Kay takes us to the raising of the Big Top.
The famous blue and yellow Big Top tent is taking shape in San Pedro as crews prepare the massive arena for Cirque du Soleil's traveling show called Totem. Cirque officials say they're thrilled to be part of the growing community.
It's a community that's on the rise, and this area is certainly wonderful. It's just a glorious space, and we're very excited to be a part of this growing community.
Cirque du Soleil officials say it takes an army to get the tent ready. A total of 200 people work for 8 days to set it up. The Big Top stands 66 feet high, and the 4 masts are 80 feet tall.
We take you through this magical journey. When you walk into the Big Top, you're kind of transported into this other world, which we hope takes you out of your daily routine of life.
Totem takes viewers on an incredible journey through mankind's evolution, a story that city officials say mirrors the transformation taking place in San Pedro itself.
Recently, we named a developer in redeveloping the LA waterfront. We have the USS Iowa here, crafted, and to officially welcome Cirque du Soleil here in Los Angeles and San Pedro in the harbor area is fantastic.
The Big Top seats more than 2,600 people who will be treated to acrobatic acts and stunning visual effects. Totem will be in San Pedro starting October 11th until November 10th. I'm Yana Kay for LA This Week.
After its run in San Pedro, Totem heads to Irvine and then to Santa Monica. And that's going to do it for this edition. Thanks for joining us. I'm Ellen Chang. A reminder that you can catch us online at lacityview.org. You can also follow and like us on Facebook. We'll see you back here next week for more of LA This Week.
a disaster strikes without warning? What if life as you know it has completely turned on its head? What if everything familiar becomes anything but? Before a disaster turns your family's world upside down, it's up to you to be ready. Get a kit, make a plan, be informed today.
G'day, Troy McCubbin from North Hollywood. You're watching LA City View, Channel 35, our city, our channel.
right, members, we need one more member. Sergeant, we need one more member. Good morning. This is the Los Angeles City Council. This is Wednesday, August 9th, 2013. And before we get to our agenda, I'm going to call the great councilman of the 11th District, Mike Bonin, who comes up there, and Bob Blumenfeld from the 3rd District. Thank you very much. We have attention.
Someone at the thing this morning. Mr. Fewer? Mr. Fewer? You guys going to stand up behind him?
Mr. Bonin, Mr. Blumenfeld, and our city attorney, Mr. Fewer, please. Thank you.
It is. Hey, you know what? Purple was good. You knew what purple was good? I did not, so I just didn't think about it. Well, the tie for you was the revelation. My staff is honored. I had it in my notes.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. President, and good morning, colleagues. We're here this morning, as are people from around the country at similar events, acknowledging and recognizing that October is National Domestic Violence Awareness Month, a time when community organizations across the country are holding ceremonial and educational events like this and outreach efforts to help raise awareness about the plague that is domestic violence. Domestic violence is a nationwide epidemic. Our LAPD estimates that every 15 seconds a woman is beaten in the city of Los Angeles. In fact, domestic violence is the leading cause of injury to women between the ages of 15 and 44 years of age. This is a problem that affects our society here and nationally. Half of the women and children who live on our streets are there because they are victims of domestic violence. 50% of homeless women and children. I was told earlier this morning that there are similar numbers of men who are victims of domestic violence who are also living on the streets. And the numbers of victims of domestic violence in LGBT relationships parallel those in heterosexual relationships. Yet, despite these facts, there is still an even more disturbing statistic. There are nearly 3 times as many animal shelters in this country than there are shelters offering help for victims of domestic violence. 3 times as many. Something is wrong with our priorities. We are not yet doing enough. Domestic violence leaves scars that we are not always able to see. Battering establishes a dynamic of control and fear in a relationship through violence and verbal intimidation. The batterer uses acts of violence as well as threats and psychological abuse, sometimes isolation, to coerce and control their partner or their children. Imagine being a child and your understanding of love is shaped and tinged by the idea that love means violence and love means abuse. It's a horrible scar to live with. We need a comprehensive approach to addressing domestic violence in our homes. It isn't easy for a battered partner to leave an abusive spouse, especially if leaving means a life on the streets here in Los Angeles. These victims need support, and they need services and housing and counseling. They need to know that they're not alone and that the City of Los Angeles has their backs. The city's domestic violence task force is where much of this crucial work is being done here in the City of Los Angeles. And part of what we're doing today is honoring and celebrating the work of the Domestic Violence Task Force. The task force is comprised of representatives from each of your offices and other city departments and organizations. It's an impressive array of individuals with expertise in the field of domestic violence. They strongly believe that a coordinated, comprehensive, and multidisciplinary approach to addressing domestic violence is key to reducing this plague and giving families a healthy beginning and a positive future. I'm very grateful to be the task force's liaison to the council, and I'm also very lucky to have standing with me today my colleague Bob Blumenfeld, who I'd like to introduce. Bob has been a leader in the state legislature on this issue, and he's bringing that same passion and that same expertise here, and I'd like Bob to say a few words as well.
Standing ovation, Bob.
Thank you, Mr. Bonin. Thank you for letting me share in this, and we appreciate the work you do as liaison to this very important task force. Domestic violence is one of those issues. It doesn't know racial boundaries. It doesn't know economic boundaries. It doesn't know boundaries. It happens everywhere. It happens more than you think. In fact, in my district, not too long ago, just a couple of months ago, there was a very high-profile murder that was a result of domestic violence. It's something that can and should be prevented. In fact, a statistic I learned today is that every day 3 women die because of domestic violence in this country. It's unacceptable. How do we stop it? We have great folks dedicated to the task of who are standing behind me, both in terms of the Domestic Violence Task Force, the social service agencies, and the police. The police are the front line on this. We have to realize that domestic violence is not just an issue of social service, but it is very much a public safety issue. And part of that is awareness. And one of the things about celebrating awareness this month is that it's not just knowing that, being aware and saying, okay, we're aware of the issue. It's everybody opening their eyes a little bit to your friends and your neighbors and seeing if there's a situation and knowing that there are resources out there and you can go to someone who you think may or may not be a victim of domestic violence and help them get the resources they need, because there are resources out there. There are a police department that is dedicated to fighting this, and there are many important social service organizations that are dedicated to creating safe haven and opportunities for victims or potential victims of domestic violence. So I just wanted to be here. I appreciate the opportunity to say a few words and really just to be here to honor those folks who are working so hard on this issue. To know in my own 3rd Council District, we're also doing a smaller version of the Domestic Violence Task Force. We have a community action team dedicated to the issue, and it's something that I will have focused on and will continue to focus on, because it is something that plagues the city and plagues every community. Thank you. Thank you.
Colleagues, one crucial element of combating domestic violence is law enforcement. And we are very lucky that our Los Angeles Police Department has domestic violence response teams, domestic abuse response teams called DART. A number of those officers are here with us today. I'd like to acknowledge them for all their work. Thank you. They and a number of other volunteers and activists in the area of domestic violence prevention are going to be honored a little bit later in a reception upstairs in the Bradley Tower. But the other part of law enforcement addressing this problem is prosecution. And we are very lucky that we have here in the city of Los Angeles a lead prosecutor, a city attorney who brings both a passion for law enforcement and a sensitivity for this issue. And I'm very pleased to introduce Mike Feuer.
Thanks very much, Mike. We just held a press conference before the council convened this morning to talk about this issue. And we talked about the depth of connections that aren't often made, but must be made, among key issues we confront. Domestic violence is deeply tied, too frequently, to gun violence. Many of you know that in my office I've appointed a new gun violence prevention coordinator to lead our efforts, and his name is Greg Dorfman. And one of Greg's first acts is to have us work in close cooperation, police department, our office, to assure that if somebody is a domestic violence perpetrator and they're not permitted to possess a weapon, then in the course of that prosecution, that weapon leaves the house. Because it cannot be that we allow those who will perpetrate domestic violence to have access to weapons. Other connections are similarly important. Gang violence is deeply tied to domestic violence. We know this in part because of the leadership of one of my key staff members on this issue, Eve Sheedy, who stands next to me here. Eve, who is a vice chair of the Domestic Violence Task Force, is one of the innovators in the country on recognizing the depth of that connection. When I was on the city council, I worked with the county to get a grant so that there could be trained therapists who would come out to domestic violence scenes with LAPD. Why? And this ties to the gang violence issue. Because a witness of domestic violence, a child who witnesses it, let alone being victimized by it, is much more likely to be a perpetrator of violence as they grow up. much more likely to get involved, for example, in gang activity. So let's think about the depth of those connections as we recognize our honoree, the honoree who received the Dr. Marjorie Browdy Award this morning, Susan Hess, whose focus in her research is on what happens in brain development when someone is victimized by trauma. And you'll hear much more from my office on that issue, and here's why. There's emerging science that says that if kids grow up in an environment that is pervaded with trauma, either from domestic violence or gang activity or gun violence or other sorts of trauma, that child's brain development is slowed. That child is much more likely to develop attention deficit disorder and other kinds of issues that lead that child to struggle in school. So let's think about these connections. Effective prosecutions, dealing with domestic violence and gun violence, dealing with domestic violence and gang activity, thinking about the impact of domestic violence on the development of our children, and recognize that as we stand before all of you this morning and talk about this being a key month to heighten awareness of domestic violence, that there is so much more we can do. We can see it, we can touch it. Let's move forward and take action. So congratulations to Dr. Susan Hess. I want to thank Eve. I want to thank Donna Edmiston, who runs the family violence unit of my office. And I especially want to express appreciation for the teamwork that continues to evolve among the police department, our office, and each member of this city council, as well as the mayor's office and the controller. This is a new day in city government, working as a team, and that's terrific. Thank you.
Colleagues, key members of that team are your appointees to the Domestic Violence Task Force. I'd like to introduce right now the chair of the Domestic Violence Task Force, Debbie Ashe.
Welcome. Thank you so much. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for having us today. This is great. I want to also bring attention. We also do awareness. Our awareness campaigns, as you saw outside in the rotunda, our photo op today. That's one of our media outlets. And also, we're going to be showing you a PSA, and I think that we can kind of start that now and take a look at that and see. We produced this about 7 years ago, but it's definitely very timely for today. That's not the PSA. No. Let's see. God. Uh-oh, whoops. It's okay.
No problem.
Yeah.
Many priorities.
Yeah. Gotta give everyone's list of tasks for the day or something on that one.
It's another presentation.
Yeah, whoops. Okay. Did you find that one?
We do audio okay, Debbie, over it. Anita's helping us over here right behind Carolyn.
Okay, great. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and continue on. Thank you. And I want to say thank you to my council member Tom LaBonge for appointing me to the task force about 7 years ago, starting out as a member and then working my way into the executive board and now as your chair. So I really want to say thank you to everyone, and I really appreciate all this collaboration today. I also would like to introduce Eve Sheedy today, my vice chair, City Attorney's Office. Please come up and say a few things also.
Good morning. My boss already spoke, but anyway, I just want to thank everyone for the work and to recognize, as the city attorney mentioned, that this is something we need to do together, that we need your representatives on the task force, law enforcement, our office, and the community. We, in the community of domestic violence, are a pretty tight group, as you can see. But we need the support of you, the policymakers, in order to really move these agendas forward. So thank you in advance for your support and for your support today. And to LAPD and the officers who've gone above and beyond in their work to protect victims of domestic violence.
Thank you so much.
So apparently there's a technical problem with the public service announcement, but we're very lucky because there's more than one way to get the word out. And the mistress of ceremonies for today's events is a well-known public figure here in Los Angeles who is herself, through her presence and through her voice, spreading the word about this issue. And so I'd like to introduce Christine Devine.
Thank you.
feel like I should be doing the interviewing. As a member of the media, I want to express my gratitude to you all for listening to this topic and hearing more about this topic. It's a big importance to me because I work with children in foster care, and I can tell you I've met many, many children who are victims of abuse, who are scarred emotionally and physically by what they have witnessed within their own homes at the hands of their own parents. One of the stories we recently covered is the shortage of foster care homes for children ages 0 to 5, and that is a direct result, according to the head of DCFS, of the death of a boy in Palmdale, Gabriel Fernandez. More people now are saying, well, maybe that incident I saw with my neighbor, I should call that in. So because of that, more and more children are indeed entering the system. As a member of the media, I am proud to say we're doing something about this as well. I work directly with the Interval House and helped them make their videotape with their youth education program where they go out to the schools. And also my fellow colleagues with the Good News Foundation. We are huge donors to the Good Shepherd Shelter. We helped build a computer lab for the women and the children there and helped call in some friends and favors and some big dollars to back them in their little place of paradise where they're doing their good work. So thank you very much. We need to make a difference on this because I see it in the children. I see how they get scarred. I see how it lasts a very, very long time, if not forever. And they are indeed our future, as you know. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Christine Devine. So, Michael, that completes it. Let's give everybody a very big hand. And we don't forget the LBGT community and all the issue and bullying, which is so horrible in any way, because everybody should have a good day. Domestic violence, there's no excuse. Thank you, LAPD, Mr. City Attorney, Mr. Bonnet for all your leadership, and Mr. Blumenfield, good job. Thank you. Let's give them all a big hand there. Deborah Biederman, great hand there. Mr. Clerk, we got 14 members. Let's open the roll and start the program.
Blumenfield, Bonnet, Buscaino, Cedillo, Englander, Fuentes, Weezer, Carrasco, Corin, LaBonce, Martinez, O'Farrell, Parks, Price, Wesson, 14 members present, and a quorum, Mr. President.
First order of business.
Approval of the minutes.
Ordered by Mr. Buscaino, seconded by Mr. Parks.
Mr. President, that brings us to commendatory resolutions for approval.
Moved by Mr. Fuentes, seconded by Mr. Weezer. So ordered.
Very good, sir. There are requests from the Office of Finance to continue item 1A to October 23rd and to receive and file item 1F inasmuch as the taxpayer has resolved its tax liability.
So, it's based on your recommendation, we got to vote on it, or could I just
No, sir. You can do that without objection.
Without objection. So ordered.
Very good, sir. Further, it should be noted that on item 11, the streets on which the oversized vehicle restricted areas are being established are Bundy Drive and Centinela Avenue, not Monterey Road as incorrectly identified on the council agenda.
So that should be noted. Bundy Drive. Thank you.
Very good, sir. That brings us to item 1. It's an item noticed for public hearing. We do have cards on items 1B, C, D, and E, and council previously moved A and F. So again, B, C, D, and E have cards, and there's nothing left to vote on.
We have 3 cards, so we'll have first.
Mr. President, perhaps you'd like to run through the agenda first before going back to that?
Good. I got that. Good job, Alan. Okay.
Very good, sir. Items 2 through 6 are items for which public hearings have been held. Council should lay item 2 on the desk until the Economic Development and Budget and Finance Committee reports can be submitted, can be circulated.
So let's lay 2 on the desk. Any specials on those other items, members? No specials. Open the roll. Close the roll. Tabulate the vote.
14 ayes.
14 ayes. So ordered. Next.
And Mr. President, items 7 through 13 are items for which public hearings have not been held. 10 votes are required for consideration.
Let's for consideration. Open the roll. Oh, we got to get consideration first, Mr. O'Farrell.
Okay. All right.
Close the roll. Tabulate the vote.
14 ayes.
So for consideration, it's in front of us. Mr. O'Farrell.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to call item 12 special for Paul Koretz.
12 special for Mr. Koretz. 8 special for me. Any other special?
10, please.
10 special for Mr. Blumenfield. Thank you.
And Mr. President, we do have cards on items 7, 8, 9, 10, and 13.
they'll be called special, right, Mr. Clerk?
Yes, sir. That does leave item 11 for council
All
to
right,
consider.
let's open up for the roll on item 11. Close the roll. Tabulate the vote.
14 ayes.
Okay, what do we got right now?
Mr. President, that takes council back to items called special.
Okay, so we got to go to item number 1.
Very good, sir. That would be item 1B, C, D, and E, called special for cards.
All right, well, first we wanted to call on for one. It will be Mr. Kenneth Bounds. Kenneth Bounds.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Kenneth Bounds. I represent Infinity Auto Park. We're currently working with the Office of Finance, and we'd like to begin working with the city attorney to offer settlement to settle all of Infinity Parking's outstanding tax balance. This matter has been continued for 2 weeks already. It just hasn't been enough time to really get the numbers together and make a settlement offer to anybody. So I'd like to request that it be continued again. We're trying to pull together all of our information and be able to make a meaningful settlement offer to the city.
We have Mr. Weezar.
Thank you, Mr. President. This person's in discussions with Building and Safety, so we'd like to continue this for 2 weeks, B, D, and E. Number 1, please, and see if we could find a resolution to this matter.
That sounds good for me. Mr. Cook, that's okay with you?
Yes, sir, and for clarification, that is October 23rd.
October 23rd.
Yes, sir. Would you like to continue that matter without objection?
We do have other cards. Do I take those cards now?
That's your prerogative, sir.
Okay, since we're going to continue all this matter, Mr. Walsh, we're going to continue this matter unless you have something important to say. I didn't hear you, Mr. Walsh. All right, thank you. Thank you, sir. We're going to continue this. Mr. Walsh, Mr. Herman, please.
John Walsh, blogging at Hollywood Highlands, HIGHLANDS.org. Always a pleasure to speak in front of my former city councilman, Mr. Labange. You know, this Infinity thing, it's almost $750,000. 2 weeks ago, you say, you'll spend 2 weeks and you'll come to a conclusion, and then they'll come back. Now it's another 2 weeks. The number one thing about the LA City Council is they never get anything done in 2 weeks. Why 2 weeks ago didn't you say 4 weeks? I know that the city attorney, who's responsible, is too busy making political speeches here to actually deal with Infinity. And also, I'm glad you made a deal with Pacific Dining Car to pay what they owed. And F is Darling International, who owe us $27,000. Where's Darling? They haven't paid either. HollywoodHighlands.org.
Mr. Herman.
Good morning, members of Council. Mike Fuhr, your point was very good, but I must get on subject now. I find it a waste and a time of waste when your communication services sometimes hinders our vocal points, so I hope it's working out today. But items B, C, and E, I know they've been deferred, and I can't say too much on them, but let's have a more comprehensive investigation on these liens so we can recover these taxes and get this city working again. Hold my time, please.
That completes that. No speakers on the queue. Open the roll. Close the roll. Tabulate the vote.
14 ayes.
Thank you very much. Can we go to number 7?
Very good. That's item 7, called special for cards.
Arnold Sachs. Is Arnold here? John Walsh.
Yes, thank you. Good morning, Arnold Sachs. Playa Vista, isn't that the community that has the methane mitigation controls? Playa Vista has methane mitigation controls, but the Grove, where an explosion occurred from a methane leak doesn't have methane mitigation controls. Now, it says here that no special taxes will be levied upon dissolution of the Community Facilities District. So that must mean there was some taxes levied for the Community Facilities District. So who pays the freight then if no new bonds or no new assessments will be levied? Who pays the freight for whatever was picked up by the bonds or whatever the assessments covered in this methane-controlled area of Playa Vista? And thank goodness they have methane containment, although, as the Grove shows, with an explosion, you don't really need it.
Mr. Walsh? Thank you very much. No speakers on the queue. Open the roll. Close the roll. Tabulate the vote.
14 ayes.
Forthwith on this matter, Ellen. Forthwith. Item number 9, Mr. Sachs.
Yes, thank you again, Arnold Sachs. The Convention Center and its plans. Well, how can you really make plans when your management company is locked in dispute, or you don't have any idea of what's going to happen with the NFL? According to this article from 7/26/11, by the way, it's a non-binding MOU that was proposed by the honest Jan Perry. Not a binding MOU, a non-binding. You remember that, Mr. City Attorney? That was the day you had the problem with your glasses. Remember this one? I do. And what about the subsidiaries for AEG, like LA Arena Land Company? Do these plans include those subsidiaries? And Mr. Labange, I know that you were a member of the Tourism and Trade Committee when the AEG was offered the ability to have the advertising rights at the convention center. So, did you happen to read where Chase Manhattan just signed an agreement for $17,000 a month to put their advertising on the side of a residential building? So how much money is AEG paying for the rights to advertise at the convention center? Part of that sum of money that you wish to negotiate was to be used for the libraries. We had an interesting discussion about the cost of advertising the new electronic billboards. So all these things being considered, how can you have a plan? And remember, you had, and thank goodness she kept her office, Gina Marie Lindsay come before a committee and talk about the 2008 airport master plan that was proposed, $160 million master plan that didn't include anything for transportation, light rail line-wise. So how do you have a master plan without any plan for
Thank you, Arnold. No speakers on the queue. Open the roll. Close the roll. Tabulate the vote.
14 ayes.
14 ayes. We're going to go to 13. Is that all right, Alan?
Yes, sir. Item 13, called special for cards.
Mr. Herman.
Under this motion, it points out that to use half of the office space at Chatsworth Depot in an office sharing arrangement with Chatsworth Neighborhood Council. Now, the idea is, has the Neighborhood Council made this agreement? Yes. Can we get a little quietness in here, please?
Please speak and address the...
Thank you.
Thank you.
I heard Mr. LeBon. Calm down. It says, under the request of the Department of General Services and the Department of Neighborhood Improvement or Empowerment, if we have empowerment, it says here that the depot and the office sharing arrangements with the Chatsworth Neighborhood Council, this sublease shall require and provide insurance in an amount with. Why should the city cover an insurance for an outside person or a sharer of the community that wants to use this parcel? The city should cover that. We should be protected and bonded when we go into any public entity that provides services, activities, and programs for the public. Thank you.
All right. The 13. No speakers on the queue. Open the roll. Close the roll. Tabulate the vote.
14 ayes.
14 ayes. Next item. 10. Item 10.
That brings us to item 10, called Special for Cards, and Councilmember Blumenfield.
Thank you very much. Mr. Blumenfield.
Great, thank you. The reason I called this one special is I wanted to offer a friendly amendment to this item. It's my own motion, but I wanted to make a slight amendment to stipulate that we have a report back within 30 days to give the CAO time to research the status of compliance of the law in question. The law in question is AB 1650, which is a law that I authored along with our city attorney, Mike Feuer. We jointly authored when we were in the legislature, and it was to specifically go after companies that are doing business with Iran's energy sector, and specifically to prevent local governments and state government from contracting with such companies. And one of the things, the reason why we're bringing this up is it sort of came to my attention anecdotally that a lot of the city agencies weren't necessarily aware of this law, and I wanted to make sure that they're aware of it, make sure that they are complying with it, because it's very important. Obviously, the new city attorney and I feel that this is very important, but it's important for U.S. security. It's important for it's an important law that we think the city should comply with, not only because it's the law, but because of what it means. And I know that our city attorney is here as well, and I believe wanted to say a few words, if through the president, if that's okay.
Yeah, center table. Center table, Mr. Feuer. Thank you, Mr. Feuer. Thank you, Mr. Blumenfield.
A moment ago, I tried sitting in the president's unoccupied chair to my left, and I was immediately taken away because it's a special place, Mr. Labange.
You can sit in my chair anytime. Sergeant Johnson, don't do that, Sergeant. He's got any one of our seats.
It was a very respectful act of deference to the president. All right, so it's actually a very timely matter to have Mr. Blumenfield's motion heard today, because in the international news is the question, are the sanctions that the United States, states, and cities are imposing with other international partners helpful? I think the answer clearly has been yes, in trying to move Iran to a better place. Should they subside? I think the answer is clearly no. Now, Mr. Blumenfield and I, working in the legislature, authored this bill pursuant to authority conferred on us by the federal government. When Congressmember Berman was in office, he spearheaded that effort, and it came to fruition in the state. So California became the leading state in the nation on this issue. It's essential, not just a good idea, it's essential that California's legislation be effectuated in the largest city in the state. Anything other than that sends a message of ambivalence to Iran. By contrast, a strong, unified approach where we're actually implementing this important law sends a very powerful message of unified support. And lest you think that laws like this are merely symbolic, when Mr. Blumenfield and I wrote this law, an article appeared, Bob will recall, in the Financial Times of London, talking about the impact of California's legislation internationally, on the changing of international behavior. The city of Los Angeles ought to be a part of that because the law requires it. We ought to be a part of it because ethics requires it. We ought to be part of it because effectively dealing with one of the most significant threats in the world compels it. Mr. Blumenfield, thank you very much for your motion. I look forward to continuing to partner with you to assure we're effectuating this important law.
Thank you, Mr. Attorney. If you wanted to sit there, Mr. Koretz.
Well, I would ask that we add something to this, and I think the timing is great. The issue is important, but I would ask that we take a step back in history a few years, and at the same time we do this, if we could do a similar thing with a piece of legislation that I authored, and I cannot give you the number off the top of my head nor the year, but the predecessor to this was a similar measure relating to the Sudan and to the ongoing genocide there, which I believe still continues, although a little slower, still unabated to this day. And I wonder if we at the same time could check our compliance with a similar piece of legislation and amend our direction to direct that we also look at the state contracting status relating to our relationship with the Sudan and those who contract with them.
Mr. Koretz, our council city attorney, has just a reminder.
Just perhaps it'd be best to have that in a separate motion so that it's not really related to this item.
But thank you for bringing that up.
All right.
I appreciate that.
I thought it would be easier if we legally can't do that, then I would do it separately. I think this one is more pressing because of the state of the world. Indeed, I'm glad to see this move forward.
Right. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Fear. Appreciate it greatly. No other speakers on the queue. We have two cards. Mr. Arnold Sachs, Mr. John Walsh.
Yes, thank you. Good morning again, Arnold Sachs. I'm somewhat reminded of the time that the City Council, before some of you were elected here, took action against Arizona to boycott Arizona. And this action taken by the Council that was giving local firms an 8% advantage for bids in the city, and then the City Attorney announced that local refers to county and state. And that was in October 15, 2011. And in November of 2011, the City Council signed a contract with an Arizona firm for $97.5 million. And at the same time, in May of 2012, LAX gave a program for local firms. And at the same meeting, they awarded a contract to a Chicago firm for $5.9 million. So I don't know. So much for substance.
Mr. Walsh.
John Walsh, blogging at HollywoodHighlands.org. Thank you, Council. This is the most important piece of legislation, an ordinance that you have passed in years. Because everybody knows, now where is Jerry Brown? Comprehensive review to make sure that, contractors aren't cheating and doing business with both the city and the county of Los Angeles and the state of Los Angeles. We don't have any evidence. A comprehensive review now, not just the city of Los Angeles, that we are observing this ban on Iran, but the county of Los Angeles, every county in the state, every city in the state, and for Jerry Brown, the state of California, because everybody knows there's cheating going on. Everybody knows there's a little oofty-goofty. Everybody knows behind the scenes and under the table that contractors who are in bed with Iran are also in bed with Jerry Brown, okay? Now, I'm telling you right now, Mr. Brown, you want to be our governor for 4 more years, maybe president, God knows what? Comprehensive review. Get up tomorrow and order every city and county in this state to do a comprehensive review on this Iran law, this Iran Contracting Act, which is being observed more in the breach than in the action. And I just want to say, there's only one place where I'm more unpopular than the City Council chambers of Los Angeles, and that is the City Council chambers of Tehran. And they don't even know that I'm Jewish, and they hate me. HollywoodHighlands.org.
Mr. Blumenfield, to close.
Just to remind me, this is fairly easy to comply with in terms of there's a DGS list. We can just look at the companies that are on there and compare them to the companies that we are contracting with. I ask for this for your aye vote on this important bill with the amendment as discussed for the 30 days with the CAO. Thank you.
Okay, let's open the roll, close the roll, tabulate the vote.
14 ayes.
Thank you. We're going to number 12. Mr. Koretz called 12 special.
No, it was
Oh, Mr. O'Farrell, excuse me. Mr. O'Farrell, 12 special.
Okay. Yes, Mr. Koretz.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just wanted to make my colleagues and the public aware that we are declaring Harajuku and Melrose sister streets, rather than, so a little different than our sister city program, but the same concept. They are both internationally influential in the realm of fashion and have similar ideas, and this would give us an opportunity to sort of share ideas and products and trends between these natural centers. And so this is the first sister streets relationship that we're aware of, and we hope this pioneers another step towards international collaboration for our two cities and for these two streets. So I thank you, colleagues, for your support of this effort.
Thank you, Mr. Koretz. We do have a card on this item. Mr. Walsh, John Walsh.
John Walsh, blogging at HollywoodHighlands.org. We're all in favor of, we should make Hiroshima our sister city. Have we made it in Nagasaki? I think, but on this issue, now we have something new called sister streets. But I think we should go even further down the chain. I want you to name Yucca and Argyle Street in Hollywood sister intersection of the main intersection in Hiroshima. And maybe we should go to sister apartment buildings. One apartment building here, one apartment building somewhere else. Or maybe even sister floors, or maybe even sister apartments. I offer my apartment as a sister to any apartment in the world, especially where my friends are in Iran. And I'm moving out. HollywoodHighlands.org.
Okay, Mr. Labange.
Chairman of Sister Cities will accept this concept, but we want to make sure it's a valid. As you vote yes for it, but as we go forward to make sure we note this, we have many squares in our town, and do we have it listed and formalized as well as we should? We'll be working with Avak Italian on that, who heads up the Legislative Analyst's Office on Sister Cities. So just to do that. Thank you, Paul. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, let's vote on this item. Let's open the roll, close the roll, tabulate the vote.
14 ayes.
Okay, we're going to move on to our next item, which is item 8. I do want to acknowledge our CAO is here, Miguel Santana, with a brand new haircut. I want you to know that I could tell. Okay, and I'm favorable of it, Miguel. Mr. Labange, do you want to start off with item 8, or do you want to take the cards first?
Take the cards first.
Okay, so I've got Mr. Sachs. Is Mr. Gus? Oh, Daniel, I see you. And Mr. Walsh. And I have Mr. Constituent. So let's go, Arnold, followed by Daniel. In fact, Daniel, if you would have got up here first, you could have spoke first. Okay, Arnold, let's roll.
Mr. President, may I ask a quick question first for clarification? Item number 2, we were waiting for a report, and I put a card in on that.
It's my understanding, Mr. Clerk, we do not have to take public comment on 2, or we do? Oh, okay, so public hearing was satisfied on that. So now, Arnold, we're on 8. Let's speak on 8.
Okay, so then I'll spend my 2 minutes on this. Thank you. We heard while your domestic violence presentation, there was no boundaries. So your city is looking to bring a franchise to the city or maybe even to the county, because you don't include the City of Industry and its proposed stadium in your motion here for the NFL to come to LA. So where does that leave you? Are you looking at AEG controlling the interests of downtown, the convention center, without any input from the City of Industry? You know, when all that hullabaloo came along and the state legislature that was passed, by some of you might have even voted for it, that allowed for the exemption for the EIRs that had to move through courts, first for the City of Industry, and then you voted for two, one in the House and one in the Assembly and one in the Senate, for exemptions not only for the stadium at AEG, but for other construction in AEG.
Your Honor. Thank you, Mr. Sachs. I'm sorry. Mr. Gus Daniel, followed by John Walsh.
Good morning.
Go right ahead.
Good morning. Los Angeles reaffirming its interest in the NFL is like my reaffirming my interest in Jessica Alba. It's not going to happen. Los Angeles reaffirming its interest in the NFL is like my expressing my passion for Sharon Tate. It's a joke. It's not going to happen. I'm going to make a metaphor for Los Angeles and the NFL. Los Angeles, to make a metaphor, has a fiscal erection for a stadium to which nobody's going to come. And if City Council doesn't like the metaphor, it can apply the metaphor to itself. And I'm going to give you an example of how Los Angeles, Commissioner Goodell, how Los Angeles is a business-unfriendly city. This is from just the peanut gallery here in Los Angeles. You know, we had a policy where if you parked at a broken meter in Los Angeles didn't want to fix the meter, it just wanted to cite us and fine us instead of fixing the damn meter. And the problem is, it took Sacramento to fix the Los Angeles parking meter problem. And you know you're in trouble when you rely on Sacramento to fix the city of Los Angeles problems. You'll do much better, NFL, by leveraging Los Angeles' interest to make profits in a better football city, in a better business city, because Los Angeles already lost the LA Rams. We already lost the LA Raiders. We are not a football city. We are not a business-friendly city. And Los Angeles, when you're here on a day-to-day basis and it's not a football Sunday, it's a terrible place for the NFL to be. I hope and pray that somebody shows this comment to Roger Goodell and they thank us for our efforts for a football field that never happens, and just wait till public comment. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Daniel. Mr. Walsh? And Mr. Walsh, I've been informed that you have one minute.
Right, that's right. John Walsh, blogging at HollywoodHighlands.org or J. Walsh Confidential. You know, something like this was on the agenda yesterday. Leverage. Roger Goodell uses this as leverage. He goes to a city, he makes a deal with the city, and then he says, this is the NFL commissioner, if you don't go my way and sign my contract, I'm going to go to L.A., to Farmers Field, and the other cities sign. There's never going to be a NFL franchise in your lifetime. And some of you up there are going to live for another 20, 30, 40 years. It's a joke. And here's the best part of the joke. Read what it says. It says, they asked Roger Goodell to consider expanding the NFL. Oh, I'm sure when he hears that the LA City Council wants him to expand the NFL, he's going to say, yes, boss! And I'm sure he's going to add 2 more teams. And if he added 5 more teams, you still wouldn't get a team, because this city, as Mr. Gus said, is business unfriendly.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Okay, Mr. Labange.
Members, that was public comment, and I don't know if any of the public comment should be taken.
Oh, wait a minute, Mr. Labange.
Yeah.
My era. It would make it easier for me if you would sign your actual name. But now, Mr. Constituent, a.k.a. Mr. Herman.
How many years have I been a constituent in name for all of you? Hold on. Mr. LeBon, here we go. Master plan for a football field? When the city alone cannot practice its practice of checks and balance, can you, the city of Los Angeles, can we afford a team at this time and moment when the idea of a master plan or even a subject of where's our council to say, wait a minute, we have communities that want to speak on this matter, but we won't hold town meetings. Wait, no. Let's just go forward and do it anyways while the taxpayers suffer on their liens and on their sobriety tests. All these troubles, right, Mr. Weston? It's funny. But the truth is, referring and assuring the support of an NFL team, I was always for it. I loved the Raiders when they were here. And at the time when the Rams, I was there at the Coliseum. So to save the taxpayers' money and to create new jobs, fix the Coliseum. Put it back in its historic, monumental place, improve it, enhance it, and modify it for people with disabilities to attend football games. That's all we want, Mr. LaBonge. We want to see a team that represents not just individuals, but people like ourselves here who want to see a team in Los Angeles. And yes, KISS, K-I-S-S, kissing who? Identifying what? Social? Society? No. Demonstrate it for the public.
He is
have
not talking
interest
about this
in our
Okay,
topic.
Mr. Constituent, thank you. All right, now we'll return to Mr. LaBonge.
Thank you very much. I'm going to call an audible and ask Jerry Miller to sit at the table there and give us an update on what goes on.
That is an audible. Yes, Mr. Miller.
Very briefly, as many of you know, the council has already approved the transaction for a football stadium at the convention center. Again, to reiterate, there is absolutely no public money of any kind, no land subsidy, no tax money of any kind in the proposed event center. The deal is in place, and all we're waiting for now is for AEG to secure a team. If they secure a team and it's compliant with the provisions of the lease, which means that the team can't leave and there are commitments they have to make over the term of the deal, then we are ready to move forward.
Thank you, Mr. Miller. Members, colleagues, what I did is at the beginning of the season, I said to myself, I'm going to write a letter. And I wrote a letter out to Roger Goodell, National Football League commissioner. His brother lives in my district. I once was knocking on doors, as you all did. And he said he was very encouraged by this, as his brother was, that they would come back one day to Los Angeles. So I thought I'd write a letter, which I did, and I did get responses from both the Carolina Panthers, Mr. Richardson, as well as Mr. Johnson from the New York Football Jets, and some other conversations over the phone. All I did is say, hey, we want football here again because it's been a long time. My son's now 15, never seen a pro game in L.A. Had to take him to San Diego or to Oakland to see a game. And I think it's important that we open the door up again for football here at some place, whether it may be. There's a lot of talk, and I don't know what it could be, but I know my colleague, our colleague, Mr. Parks, worked very hard on this. He can't smile anymore, but he could say he worked very hard on, now he's smiling a little. He worked very hard on this for many years. Mark Ridley Thomas worked very hard on this for many years. All it was is a simple letter, and I did get a letter back from the league that says, if John Walsh put another 40 pounds on, we may put him at middle linebacker. Looking at him scares everybody. But anyway, that's a compliment, John. I love you, John. I hope you take it. I like John a lot, and he lives in my district. I took advantage of you, John. I just wanted to be light, because this is just a time to remember. Every year there's a season. Every year there's an opportunity. And these letters you'll get sent out. I also have a count here of our population. We're second in the country. And if you could roll that out there, if you would, right there. Let me get this here.
Do you need help?
This is on a chart right here. There we are, Los Angeles right here. Another 32 teams. Buffalo has 1 million people. And another chart that I put up, my council district is the 32nd population. There's one region that's smaller than my council district as far as population from a metropolitan area in there. Buffalo has a smaller city of 261,000. So all I'm just saying, this is an opportunity to look at it, to remind them we are here. We have great college with the University of Southern California, the University of California, Los Angeles, UCLA, USC. a small college, which is good too, at Occidental and other places. But if you look at the country,
Speaking to the mic, Tommy.
I got it right now. You look at the country, there's the teams. There's the teams. And they should come out. Somebody expand it. I can take expansion. We could work on that. We could do it. So I just wanted to remind us this is the opportunity. Every season there's a new, and you never know what a little letter will do. So I'm going to end this, Mr. President, by telling you it's important. It's important that we do it.
Thank you.
It's important that we do it.
Thank you, Mr. Labange. Okay, now, Mr. Buscaino, I will acknowledge you if you promise not to put additional poundage on any of our visitors today, and you
No, sir. Well,
leave that to Mr. Labange.
Right. Well, thanks, Tom, for passing the ball over on this side. And thank you, Tom, for being a cheerleader for our city and ensuring that we bring an NFL team here. Colleagues, last year, I remember having the chambers filled with our business community, the labor community, our fans, asking us to approve the stadium so that an NFL team will come to the city of Los Angeles. Colleagues, we've done our part. We are asking the NFL to do theirs. Just last night, my son's first flag football game happened at Bogdanovich Park, and he plays on the Panthers. And to know that our kids don't have an NFL team to cheer for is unacceptable. Let's continue to send that message that LA is open for NFL business. Tom, thank you for your leadership. It's our turn. It's our time. We're going to have we already have a championship baseball team in the LA Dodgers. We need to bring the Vince Lombardi Trophy to the city of Los Angeles. Let's let NFL know, continue to let them know that it's our turn. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Buscaino. Mr. Koretz. I'm glad Tommy can catch. Yes, Mr. Koretz.
Well, I would take the pass, but I don't think it would be much of a challenge from 2 seats away. I just want to join in saying it's time for Los Angeles to have a football team. I want it to be the Rams. I've missed them since I was a kid. But if not, even an expansion team, we'll turn this into a championship team in a year or two if we do that. We need to get this message to the NFL that we want a team, the city's behind it. Let's make it happen.
Thank you. Mr. Labange, to close.
Bryce, thank you for your help on this and your leadership as well. I'll keep you posted. I like expansion as opposed to having relocation because every city loves their team. So I ask for an aye vote. 331. Hut, hut.
Okay, Mr. Labange. Let's prepare to vote on this item. 331, Hut, open the roll. Close the roll, tabulate the vote.
14 ayes.
Thank you. Forthwith. We're going to now go to item 2.
Yes, sir. That's item number 2. It was held on the desk for the Budget and Finance and Economic Development Committee's reports to be circulated. Both have been circulated and are now before Council for its consideration.
Okay, Mr. Krikorian, the ball is now in your court.
Oh, please don't, Mr. President, please. Thank you. All right. There are 2 reports before you, members, from the Budget and Finance Committee and the Economic Development Committee. They are consonant in almost every way. There are a few changes that I'd like to offer as proposed amendments to the Budget and Finance Committee report, minor in nature, that will make them exactly parallel to the Economic Development Committee report, and then I'd move the Budget and Finance Committee report. Recommendation number 6 should read, instruct the CAO and LACC to report in all quarterly financial status reports relative to the implementation of the management agreement and its impact on the city budget, And in paragraph 8 should read, instruct the CAO to report in 45 days to the Personnel and Animal Welfare Committee and Economic Development Committee with details on the transitioning of all LACC employees to positions with AEG or other city departments. And with those amendments, I would move the Budget and Finance Committee report, and I'd ask Mr. Miller to come forward to report on this matter.
Okay. Jerry, or Mr. Miller?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Miguel?
It should actually be led by Mr. Santana.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, Mr. Santana, before you speak, I have two members on the queue. And Mr. Krikorian, I think I'll let them go first. Mr. Price, followed by Mr. Koretz.
Thank you, Mr. President. Members, yesterday the ED Economic Development Committee voted to support the recommendation. We heard from the CAO in some detail, specifically about concerns raised about labor, about the status of those who would be employed. And in your presentation, Mr. Santana, if you can just address again the concerns that we raised, and specifically, we understand that approximately 74 staff have not yet been placed. And so the question is, what's the current funding source for those employees, and how are they going to be funded if they've not been placed before the transition to AEG before the transition to AEG is completed before 2013? How many positions are currently available in the city, and even if feasible, is it feasible to transfer all these employees before the end of the year? Again, we supported the proposal. We think it's a good idea. It makes sense. It's an important public-private partnership, but we want to make sure, as Mr. Krikorian indicated, that there are some report backs and we get fully informed of what the status is as it moves forward.
Miguel Santana, CAO. There are currently 89 full-time employees and 35 part-time employees at the convention center. It's important to point out that, you know, it wasn't that long ago that there was well over 120 employees. So over the last several months, the number has been declining as we move forward with this proposal. Placements have been found for a significant number of those. There's about 40 left where we still are identifying placements. AEG interviewed and offered positions to any employee that was interested in moving to AEG. 8 of them have accepted. I think others are waiting until there's a final action to determine whether they move forward. The employees that we made a commitment to our workforce that we will find a placement for them within the city family. Most positions are in generic classifications where they could be easily placed in other vacant budgeted positions throughout the city. These are positions that would have normally been filled by individuals outside of the city family, and so we're working with the general managers through managed hiring to ensure that before anyone's hired from the outside, that we give first opportunity to those employees who would be impacted. Should your council move forward with this agreement, then our goal is to transition AEG fully by the end of the calendar year. Obviously, that's going to take a little bit of time. We want to make sure that it's a seamless process. We still have various events planned, with probably the largest event being the auto show around Thanksgiving. So we want to make sure that we don't have any negative impact to our clients. And so we're working with various departments to ensure that that transition occurs in a smooth manner. And so we're optimistic we'll be able to secure proper placement for the remaining employees. They will be funded through their respective budgets and their departments that they end up in. And again, these are positions that are currently vacant, budgeted, and would have been filled normally by someone from the outside.
Thank you, Mr. CAO. I am looking for Mr. Koretz. Mr. Labange, did you want to say something?
No, I think that the city administrative officers covered this here, which is real important. Taking care of the employees are there. I want to say something. Bud Overham is one of the fine general managers that we have, and his ability to move from department to department has always left it in a higher position. And I think this is the wave of the future in the sense if you look at municipal areas throughout the country to have this public-private partnership. Nothing is more dynamic than Olympic at Figueroa. When we met last week with the Olympic Organizing Committee for the trials for the marathon, we talked about track and field in general, and they said, we would love to put what they do in European cities, put a temporary track on a street and create a celebration. That's what LA Live creates, is a celebration for our community as a center. It's enhanced the great work of the University of Southern California down the street, the Figueroa corridor, all has taken place here, but you've hit all the right spots, which is making it more important. And I just want to touch it all, and if you haven't, go walk around there yourself. You'll feel like you're in someplace special. And that specialness that is around LA Live will transcend to the convention center and make it as special as we want it to be. So I just want to thank the CIO. Also want to thank the CIO staff and the city attorney staff for working on this and ask for an aye vote.
Thank you, Mr. Labange. Mr. Krikorian, I was attempting to wait for Mr. Koretz. Is there some other detail that you might want to inform? All right. With that...
Mr. President,
yes.
Pardon me. We do have a motion to move the Budget and Finance Committee report as amended. That does need a second to be voted on, sir.
Okay, seconded by Mr. Price. Let's prepare to vote on that item. Let us open the roll, close the roll, tabulate the vote.
14 ayes.
All right, forthwith. Mr. Labange. I think we go to what's left, Mr. Clerk. I think we can go to general public comment now.
That is correct, sir.
All right.
Arnold Sachs, are you still here, Arnold? Followed by Daniel Gus. Is that correct, Daniel? Come up right now. You got a head start. You're okay.
Good morning. I have an email yesterday from the executive director of Best Friends. You gave Best Friends a $20 million shelter, and he writes, "We do acknowledge that there are responsible breeders in the city of Los Angeles. Mary Alice Davis, who is Brenda Barnett's daughter, and therefore Brenda Barnett, are responsible breeders. You give Best Friends a $20 million shelter, and they say that breeding in Los Angeles is responsible." And he shows that Brenda Barnett is actively involved in dog breeding. On Thursday, May 23rd, 2013, a weekday when Brenda Barnett was paid to run LA Animal Services, she was simultaneously showing her intact dog at a dog breeding event. The only reason for being there is to attract other people for Brenda Barnett to mate her dog with. In Mr. Labange's district on February 1st, we reported to Brenda Barnett dozens of addresses with intact, unlicensed animals. Brenda Barnett acknowledged the dozens of intact, unlicensed animals. 6.5 months later, Mark Salazar writes, nothing was done about it. In fact, 2 months ago, I tried to get my own dog's license updated. 2 months later, I've not heard back from the city of Los Angeles. And you know what's funny? I raised these concerns at Friday's city council meeting, and suddenly Mr. Koretz has a parking policy change. Mr. Koretz no longer wants to give me a parking pass. He's had a policy change. So here's my policy change for Mr. Koretz. This is an email written by Mr. Koretz to people from the mayor's office and Brenda Barnett and his own staff. Mr. Koretz is a sitting council member referred to as sitting commissioner as an idiot. So where's the decorum? Quoting Mr. Koretz, "Your commissioner is an idiot and absolutely should go. The fact that the person complaining about the idiot commissioner is a moron. So I guess this brings up decorum issues for the next council meeting. Can we call you idiots and morons like Mr. Koretz calls us?"
Arnold Sachs from Lenox, California. Yes, thank you. Good morning, Arnold Sachs. You know, last week when I was here for the council meeting and you had
part of the discussion regarding neighborhood councils and the change that you want to make to the makeup of the neighborhood councils. Everybody commended each other, and it's amazing all the heavy lifting you did just to move this into making an ordinance at the city attorney's office. So this is a little story that Steve Lopez wrote about parkways. And he mentions in his story that it's taken over 2 years to get an ordinance correction on the parkways for growing vegetables in front of your home. So, Councilman Labange, you asked about bringing that ordinance back for neighborhood council soon. 2 years, you have a forthwith motion that you can make on items heard in agenda to be signed immediately. When do you expect to have the city attorney's office come up with an idea for the neighborhood councils? You put this stuff on your agendas, you stir this pot, and nothing is ever done. And yet you have people who want to serve on these councils who leave because they know nothing is done. That being said, congratulations on your celebration for for violence. But nobody spoke up when 3 months ago the County Board of Supervisors defunded a home for women protection. Nobody said anything. And yet they defunded housing for victims of domestic violence. How could that be? Where's the voices from the city council? Where's the voices from elected officials? Councilman Blumenfield, you mentioned you made noise in the state legislation. Why didn't you go to the county and step up there?
John Walsh and Mr. Sachs, anytime you want to come to the ropes and ask me any questions on the side, I'll help you. Thank you.
John Walsh, blogging at HollywoodHighlands.org. And Mr. Labange is still my favorite ex-president. I hope you saw the story on Channel 4, Joel Grover. I hope you heard, saw it at KPCC. Potholes. You want us to spend billions and billions of dollars in bonded indebtedness to solve the pothole problem. But you are paying out to fewer than 10% of the people who have had pothole damage. Fewer than 10%. You're paying them a few $100s. We have the worst potholes on the planet Earth. Way to go, Tehran. You have better streets and sidewalks than we do. I even have to say that. Good job, Ayatollah. Come on over here. Let me tell you, I hope you all saw Mike Fuhr, Big Shot, Mr. Big Shot. My great-grandfather said, Mr. Big Shot here. He gets on TV with Joel Grover one-on-one when he started interrogating him about the terrible record you have. You don't even inspect when someone puts in a request for pothole damage. You just automatically drop it. And I tell you could see the sweat pouring off Mike Fuhr. He was sliced and diced by Joel Grover. And I just want everybody out there, when you go out in your car and you have damage, these people don't give a damn. Remember, they all have city cars. When they're damaged by potholes, they get another one. I'm telling you right now, you don't hear anything about that, do you? And just watch it and go to Joel Grover. And tomorrow, Tuesday, I'm going to tell you, go to my website and you will see the evil anti-campaign buttons, Hillary Clinton campaign buttons. HollywoodHighlands.org.
Bobby Cooper.
Not present.
Bobby Cooper, not present. Henry Marine.
Well, I'm losing my voice, trying to help you find the money that you misplaced in union pension and benefit plans for the people who are the city and Hackley employees who are misrepresented as Iron Hall employees in the first place. As you know, I just spoke to the CEO back here, and he said he's just waiting for you to give him authorization to write that notice 90-day notice to get this money returned, as shown in Hackley and Cole MOUs. Now, how come you've been in office almost over 90 days now, and nobody's written that letter? It shows that plainly that you're going to loan, it shows the name of everybody who agreed to take money from the heads of departments, offices, and bureaus and use it at will until they were provided 90-day written notice to give it back. How come y'all can't see that? You know, Mayor TV said the people in this city is suffering from financial illiteracy. They reading and taking money, and they don't know how to read and write and get it back. And he said he didn't want to have no battles with the city council, nor their union partners. Consequently, the new members of this council is going to have to do what he failed to do in the first place. And Mr. Garcetti is going to be our new governor once y'all get this money back. Now we're going to be looking for another mayor for the city. Now, if y'all can't count now, and y'all can't count in the future, and you don't know the difference, can't learn the difference, you can't never make no difference. So I heard it from the CEO's mouth. He said he's waiting for y'all to give him authorization to get the money back. Now, when y'all going to get off y'all butts before the horseshoe kick you in the butt?
Alejandro Munoz. Alejandro Munoz. Last card, Mr. Herman.
Garth Wright versus the city of Portland, Oregon. When it rains, it pours in Los Angeles. Judge Ferguson said, code of conduct, speech not to a formula of civility, but open to the public in public forum. When Daniel Gus spoke up here and he used the word idiot, he wasn't referring to SpongeBob, idiot, 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 idiot. No, he is referring to a term that he was describing, an attitude, a presence in this council chambers, an attitude that must change and respect the rights of your public, your constituents. You are the constituents and you have rights. Again, the provisions of Ralph M. Brown Act, the law which guarantees the public's right to attend and participate in meetings. That's what we're doing here, protecting the rights of all of you. Congress has a problem between Democrats and Republicans, but that's not a local issue. That is a global issue. And let's get back to the Coliseum. It is a perfect place for a stadium, for a football team. So, Mr. LeBong, bring in a football team for the Coliseum. Bring in a team that will represent maybe the Raiders, maybe San Diego, maybe Buffalo. But bring in a team that we, the taxpayers, can afford to go and sit. There goes a lateral touchdown, Mr. Herman. But going back on topic, overhearing the topic with Mr. Nightingale and Van Nuys, he didn't mean anything offensive. I wasn't offended. And besides, when do children hear council chamber meetings other than to watch SpongeBob or Nick Light? Thank you.
Mr. Robinson, last card.
I would like to just echo Mr. Herman's comment about the Los Angeles Coliseum. I saw a schematic, fantastic. Mark Ridley Thomas showed me a renovated Coliseum. Why not bring the Raiders down from Oakland back to 50,000 more seats, more revenue? But I have a prepared speech here, sir. Give Oakland a new team, expand the league. Mr. President, members, a recent survey was conducted by the San Francisco Examiner. One question was asked: would you lie, cheat, and steal to get ahead? Most responded, yes. Sir, I'm not going to preach about the good old days, but suffice it to say that we When I was a child, we would never have responded in the affirmative. Morality today, the situational ethics, divorce, crime, mental illness, etc., are all predicted in the Bible. These are the last days of this system of things. Jesus is returning. The Bible in St. Matthew predicted that these last days of this system of things will bring no natural affection between parent and child. Education today is the means to make money, not the pursuit of knowledge, not the pursuit of God's will. Jesus is teaching the uplifting of the Holy Spirit, not the uplifting of soul. We must get back to the Bible by teaching the kids today. Proverbs 22:6, train up a child in the way he should go and never depart from him when he's old. Thank you.
That completes our public comment. Mr. Clerk, what's before us?
Mr. President, Council has motions for posting and referral.
So ordered.
The desk is clear.
Any announcements, members? Any announcements? Any adjourning motions? I have adjourning motion. Ask us all to please rise. Members, someone I knew long ago, but he lived to be 88, retired from the city about 30 years ago, Bill Eckert, park ranger, helped develop the park ranger interpretive program. He lived in the Bay Area. He was preceded in death by his wife, Pat, but he was a wonderful man who you would all love because he cared about parks, he cared about nature, and he was one of the first of all. I ask we adjourn in the memory of Bill Eckert. Also, I ask we adjourn in memory of Jim McLaren, another man who lived to be 83. He lived in the Los Feliz district, and he and his wife Annie hiked in Griffith Park. And they picked up all the other senior citizens and would drive them up to the Charlie Turner Trailhead and climb to Mount Hollywood and enjoy this city. He had his funeral yesterday, and many people from the neighborhood came and expressed the love for Jim McKean, survived by his wife and 2 children. And lastly, I ask we adjourn in memory of L.C. Greenwood, a member of the Pittsburgh Steelers, a phenomenal defensive player, a member of the Steel Curtain, who passed early at an age. He was a very young man, and we ask that we adjourn L.C. Greenwood. Seeing there's no more adjourning motions, go ahead and serve the city well. Continue to enjoy and love Los Angeles. This meeting is adjourned.